It is a good day. I seem to be missing Melissa. She went away. She was just here. So I don't know what's happened with the broadcasting. Melissa, are you there in the background? We might have to start this live over again. Dwight, can you give me a little comment and let me know what I should do? Oh, there we go.
Hello. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Hello.
pop up on you there. I was trying to just put my audio. Melissa, I think dropped our call. She disappeared
Oh,
from
shoot.
there. So
Let's get her back. Let's do this about in 10
yeah,
minutes.
let's
Let's get
see
her
if
back.
we are.
Can
Yeah.
you just pull
Oh,
her right
she's
back
here.
up,
She's
Dwight?
here. Yeah.
Okay.
So in South Africa, we have something called load shedding, and it just happened.
Oh, shoot. Of course, of all timing, right? That's okay. That's okay. I'm happy to see your shining face again. Nice to see you. Welcome back, risers and thrivers, to the Rise Today Inspirational Podcast. Boy, are we happy to have you with us today. Here in Canada, we just celebrated the Family Day long weekend. What a reason to have a holiday, right? Just to celebrate family and that gift of togetherness, to slow the world right down and really hone in on those you love most. So that was a really special day in our world yesterday, and I hope it was for you. I think in the United States, it was President's Day yesterday. And Melissa, who's our guest today, is from South Africa. Any holidays this weekend, Melissa?
Nothing at all.
No.
Normal.
Anyhow, we hope you really enjoyed the last show where we featured Kat from Australia, who was super open and raw and vulnerable, all about her journey with alopecia and facing baldness as a young woman. Even as a child, she had a full bald head in childhood. She now has 2 children who are also facing alopecia. And she is just this bright inspiration, full of resilience, full of hope. And I invite you to tune into that show. And today we have the amazing Melissa with us, Melissa Dashper from South Africa and just outside of Durban. Melissa's here to talk to us today all about her story after hearing those words, "You have cancer." And Melissa is a lymphoma survivor. She's this beautiful young woman who has gone through so much, and she's going to give us her tools that what helped her, rise, survive, overcome, and even thrive to where she's at today. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. We've connected on social media. You've always inspired me. I really love your blog. It's so full of hope. And I'm really just inspired by you. So I was happy to share your story with my audience. And for those who haven't seen you before on Instagram or at your blog, Melissa was only 29 when she was first diagnosed. So can you take us back to that time, Melissa? What was happening in your life before? I know you were traveling. Tell us about it.
I was in the best shape of my life, traveling.
Okay.
And yeah, just my career was at the peak. And we went on holiday to Mozambique in 2017, December. I got malaria, and the malaria, I just wasn't getting better. So we carried on and went to the doctors trying to find out what was wrong, kept on getting a pain, eventually diagnosed on the 18th of June 2018. Went into hospital, had a biopsy. 7 days later, had the port put in, and 10 days later, it was chemo. So
wow, also fast.
Yeah, I'm glad it was fast, because I didn't have, not that I didn't have time to process it, I didn't have enough time to Google, because everybody wants to Google and everybody wants to have a look at the Google doctor. But I was very, very lucky that everybody had a plan. They knew exactly what we were doing, where we were going. I didn't have to do any research on myself. My oncologist is amazing.
I hear you on that. I just want to pause for a second, because that's a really important point. Like, there are so many people that hear the words of a diagnosis, and then there's such a long span that they wait, before treatment, before more news. And I had a bit of a similar journey as to you. I was diagnosed with leukemia. To be honest, I was standing in the middle of the Vancouver Aquarium, I had no clue I was sick. I hadn't even complained of feeling sick or unwell. I had gone for this routine lab test and had a call after this routine lab test saying I needed to go to the nearest emergency room and avoid all public places. I mean, everything just unfolded so fast for me. And it was almost as though it was on autopilot, right? Like just go, 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 go. You didn't have time to almost be scared or have a wait, or everything was just planned out for you, or Google, right? It was just this flow that automatically happened. But I think that it would be really difficult, for those that hear that and then have this long extended wait on the other side. So there are perks and there are definite consequences of both, I think. But anyhow, so you visited your oncologist very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chemo exactly 10 days after the diagnosis.
Wow.
Then in the chemo got rid of most of the cancer, but I had stubborn cancer in my bone marrow, and that's when we had to do the stem cell transplant. And that was May 2019. I had to travel to Pretoria, which is about a 6-hour drive from where I am now. There's the specialist hospital in Pretoria. And so we went back and forth, met with the team, met with the social workers, and then started the process of moving from the one oncologist to the specialist in Pretoria.
So how was this all for you? What were you feeling in this time when it was all such a whirlwind?
It was just go, go, go. It was only afterwards when they said, you're in remission, you're done. That is when I had the meltdown and realized exactly what had happened in the span of 2 years. I mean, I turned 30 and I was fighting cancer. So I couldn't even have a mental breakdown at 30 and think, oh, where am I in my life? Because
it's like you're in survival mode.
Exactly.
Yeah. And did you even have time in this time to feel the fear of it all? Or did you see your success, or were you worried about your survival, or how did you feel?
I just knew that I had to. They always say, everybody always says you're so strong, and I always take a step back and think I didn't have a choice. There was no choice. It was just focus on each and every step. And when you're walking up a staircase, you focus on the steps, and then you get to the top. And thank goodness, before I knew it, we were all at the top, and we were done. I'm in remission. I've been in remission for 4 years now.
And what else was happening at that point when you were diagnosed? Were you married? Were you dating? You said you were, your career was at the peak of your career. What were you doing professionally?
So I am a customer relations liaison, meeting with customers, looking after our existing customers. I was the top salesperson in my field. So like I said, my career was at my peak. I was in the best shape. I'd lost a lot of weight, and I was just enjoying life. And we had a beautiful holiday at Mozambique, and it's kind of tainted Mozambique slightly for me because that was the start. I actually had a lump come up in Mozambique, and we thought that it was just from traveling because it's a 13-hour drive. And I managed to get into a government hospital, and they couldn't take bloods because they had no electricity.
Oh,
so,
wow.
I'm slightly grateful that they couldn't take bloods, but we did it when we were back in South Africa. And that was if I look back at the pieces of the puzzle, that was the cancer that had reared up because my lymph node was very swollen.
I see. And I heard a little secret there where you said you were practicing in that profession. Are you still practicing in that arena?
I'm with the same company, but I've just moved to being based in the office.
I see. And is that because of your health journey or totally separate?
It's because it tired me out a hell of a lot afterwards, but I've just grown I still look after some of those customers, but I've grown in a different field in the same company.
I see. Yeah. Okay, so we've kind of taken a sidebar. So let's take us back to when you're fighting in those 2 years and you're facing all this chemotherapy. And what other treatments did you have at the time?
I had radiation before the stem cell transplant. then obviously the harvest, and then the transplant in 2019.
Okay. We had a bit of a similar journey because I too had salvage chemotherapy because I hadn't responded to other chemotherapy regimens. And then I had the whole body radiation. And gosh, I just remember feeling like there was no part of me left inside. I just felt so spent, so depleted, so exasperated. I was just so fatigued by that point. Also raising 2 kids at the time. And like you said, life was completely interrupted. We were climbing the ladder of life too, and busy family with 2 babies and professional myself. And, never in a million years do you expect for life to get interrupted so bluntly, and I always describe it like the world that I knew then was literally ripped out from under my feet in the matter of seconds, and somewhat for me, never to return again on a lot of different fronts. I mean, I'm really lucky to be sitting here with you today after surviving terminal cancer with a 2-month prognosis. But, cancer comes to steal so much from us, right?
Yeah.
What did cancer steal from you, Melissa?
I cannot have kids. I can carry, but yeah. So I actually had this conversation at the beginning of the year with my oncologist because I said to him, I'm cross with you because we have he saved my life. And he said to me, why? And I said, we didn't chat about harvesting or freezing any eggs. And he turned to me and he looked at me and he said, I wanted to save Melissa. I wasn't worried about saving any future Melissas. So it kind of took a bit because we didn't even look into that option because we didn't have time. We needed to start chemo. I mean, I was already stage 4. He never told me how sick I was then. He only told me afterwards when he was not comfortable, but he said, you were very sick.
Isn't that heartbreaking though, looking back on it? Like, I had already had 2 kids. I was very blessed, but I too wasn't done. Like I always had this vision. I used to babysit 4 kids when I was like 12 years old, after graduating from babysitting class. Yeah. I love these 4 kids. And, I just sort of pictured myself as having 4 kids. And, it was, something that was also not discussed at all in my path and on my path and in my story, because again, it was so quick, everything needed to be done that was instantaneous, right? Because we were so sick at the time, but looking back on it, it deserves a conversation. It warrants a conversation because we're not thinking about it. We're just in survival mode, but there's so much about survivorship that isn't discussed along the way soon enough,
and menopause. I'm in full-blown menopause at 34 years old. I'm on hormone replacement therapy. And that was another thing is we were worried about going on it because now we've heightened my chance of breast cancer. And the oncologist said, we will still test every 3 months. We'll find, if there's anything, we'll find it. But it's afterwards you don't think, oh, you're gonna go into menopause. I'm not even I'm post completely.
You and I are similar, sister. I hit post-menopause at 35 years old and have not had a cycle since. I'm now 46. I cannot do hormone replacement therapy because along my path, I ended up having these 2 strokes on top of everything else. And that was just during the time of my lung transplant surgery, when debris had shed after big vessels had been occluded. But they find it too big of a risk to go on hormone replacement therapy. But that's a big part of this conversation because we're both young women, who were diagnosed with cancer at a very young age. You lose a bit of that femininity, you lose a bit of your womanhood, per se, if you want to call it that, and you go through a journey with this. How did you feel inside about these matters?
The hormone replacement therapy it was a worry of going on it, but we knew because as much as cancer's behind you. It's always hanging over your head.
Always there, isn't it?
Always there. You'll get a pain. You'll feel something. I had a scare in December where we thought it was back because I had polyps on my colon. So, and again, we went into the casualty ward, and the last time I'd left that hospital, I walked away with being told, you have cancer. So I didn't want to stay. I said, put me on the drip, do whatever you need to go. At 2 weeks later, I was back. So it's also, it felt like I was reliving. And that's another thing with the PTSD. You don't know what it is until it happens to you. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. I had put on so much weight. I wasn't eating. I didn't want to go anywhere. And I didn't know what it was until I sat with an oncologist and I sat with people, and that's exactly what they said. It's PTSD. And it's something, a smell. There's some songs that I cannot listen to.
Tell me what it's like. Tell me what it's like when you experience it. When you get your trigger with these smells or the songs, or what happens in those moments?
You get a sick feeling in your stomach, but you're not sure. And now I understand what it is. So I made myself listen to some of those songs and just calm down, listen to them. There's pajamas that I wore in the hospital when I had my transplant that I cannot put on.
Yeah, I totally hear you.
It's something, and there's an advert on the television, and there's this noise when they break, and that also I've now managed to not have that. I don't get freaked out. But
yeah, I had it too with clothes. It's funny you mentioned that. I almost forgot about that myself, but I couldn't wear clothes that I had worn in those times because it would bring me back to such fierce memories. Yeah. So if I put on this shirt, instantly, like the shirt would be on and I'd become all tense and stressed and I'd be in this sweat, to be honest. And I just had such vivid memories of what it was like being so sick, wearing that same outfit,
Yeah.
So I literally had to buy so many new clothes at that time because I just had to have that fresh start at the same time too, right? Which I found was so important. Also for me, I've talked about it on the show a few times, but for me, and I still get it sometimes now, where I'm fast asleep, in the comforts of my own cozy home, my babies are down the hall, and for some reason I'll wake up in the middle of the night just aghast and breathless and panting, and my heart is racing, and I'm like frantically patting the bed everywhere. I don't know where I am, and I'm trying to feel for all the tubes, that were once a part of all parts of me. I was trying to feel for the handcuffs that once held me captive to my hospital bed rails because I think I kept trying to pull out my tubes, I could hear vividly in these moments. I can hear all of the sounds, the beeps, the buzzes, the screams of agony from my fellow patients down the hall. It all comes right back. And it's like I'm right in that moment. And then for this very reason, I then painted, when I ended up being divorced after my whole journey, something else that cancer came to steal from our family. But I painted my room like this fuchsia color, because it's a stark contrast from my hospital walls that were this, pale white color, this beige, and from the 4 white walls. And so when I start to recognize the fuchsia, I start to my heart rate lowers, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Erica Jane, you're home, you're safe, you're alive, your kids are down the hall, my babies are right here. And this is what we did today. And oh my gosh, I get to be alive. I get to be here still today to witness and to experience all of these moments, and for me, I've come to change those because they are very traumatic, those traumatic moments. And I now change my perspective on them to call them my gratitude attacks. And so, because it never lets me forget how lucky I am to get to be alive today, right? So what were some of the tools that really helped you to calm those moments?
So So I went back to the office in 2020 in Jan Feb, and then March COVID hits. So that brought on a whole. I hadn't really gotten back to normal life
I see.
because we were so scared of me getting COVID. We didn't know what it was going to do. We've just now put me into remission. So I've only now started getting back into normal life per se. But yeah, I've let all my guards down. I was still wearing a mask. It's so funny because I had to wear a mask after my stem cell transplant, and everybody would look at me like there was something wrong with me. And I battled to find masks. And I never forget telling my sister, maybe I should start making masks, because I battled to find masks, I battled to find bandanas. And now, it's quite funny now because, well, not funny, but everybody was wearing masks and I wasn't the sore thumb wearing a mask.
Well, imagine in 2012. It wasn't the cool in thing, that we can pull it off as we can now, nor was my oxygen tank. So all of these things are a little bit humbling for myself. I think my kids, my family at large, it's really hard, but we have to do what we need to do to survive and get through and stay the course today, knowing that tomorrow will be brighter, right? Definitely. And it's all worth it in the end. But yes, I remember those masks for myself too. It was really, in 2012, it was really, really humbling, I have to say. It was almost like something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with me, on top of being bald and all these other signs. But, it just drew so much more attention, and we were just, as I was a leukemia patient and then also with a stem cell bone marrow transplant, right? We have no immune system, and then further with a double lung transplant, it's the same thing. And so I totally hear you. Now, do you find that you're able to keep your fears at bay about, like you were saying with when COVID hit and now are you going to get COVID? Or do you feel there's quite a high degree of anxiety about your overall health since cancer?
So I do. I suffer with anxiety a lot. I'm managing it now. I'm learning to manage it day in and day out. And little things where driving, I'm learning to drive myself, because my sister, thank goodness, my sister was with me throughout the whole journey and the whole fight, and she would drive me. So I was hardly driving. So it's little things that they can set you off. And that was the anxiety of, now you have to start driving yourself and you need to now be a normal person. So, but one step at a time, and I'm still doing it every day, one step at a time.
And for our audience who perhaps hasn't had cancer or hasn't had something so life-threatening, you're like, driving, I can't imagine it being a feat of feats, but it really is. Like, I remember the first time I went back to a grocery store. I was so excited to get to go and buy groceries again for my family, right? Like, what an honor to get to do, that I hadn't been able to do for so long. And then all of a sudden I had to pull up my Visa and pay, and all the machines were quite different. And I'm like standing there. I really understood what it must feel like to be a senior, right? Adapting to this new world of technology. I was like literally clueless. I was overcome. There were so many people behind me in the lineup, and I was just like staring at the cashier, and I was like, can you help me? Like, I really don't know what to do, And then I was so nervous to go back in the store the next time, wondering if I was going to make the same mess of myself. But, it's all these things in survivorship that you would never anticipate. You almost survived cancer, and I think everyone expects you just to be so relieved and so happy, and life is perfect after. But there's so many different things and so many fears, unexpected fears, or just hardships that you don't even foresee coming, that you deal with in survivorship. And as much as a gift as it is to get to be here today, it's really important to discuss those things, right? Because that is how we thrive. And if we bottle this up and just pretend, oh yeah, I'm super, super, super happy all the time, right? That's not going to help us lead our best life today with the gifts we've been given and all these extra bonus days we've been given.
That was my biggest thing, is afterwards, I didn't have this, oh, now you're going to take on the world, tackle the world. And that was my whole, and now what? Are you should be a changed person. And it was, I battled with that because it was almost, I couldn't get back into normal life because I thought it should be different. And that's the thing. It's, you just need to transition, and I'm still doing it. Like I said,
no, I hear you.
There's so many things that you still have. I mean, we've got a possibility of an autoimmune disease. I had to have a biopsy on skin. So there's always something. And again, that triggers, but you deal with it, and you deal with it the best way you know how. There's no handbook.
There's no roadmap. Yeah. No, I hear you on that. You almost, after you dust yourself off, you survive cancer, you come off, you dust yourself off. I ended up facing divorce too, like 6 weeks after I was finally home from hospital. So I faced a move really early after in my recovery. Single mama, just adapting to life, right? And dust yourself off, and then you're kind of looking around and you're like, well, what do I do now? Right? I couldn't go back to my profession that I had been trained in, that I was very successful in. I had owned my own healthcare practice. I couldn't return because I would forever be too immune compromised to treat patients in that small capacity. And it's such a physical job. I would never have the strength that I used to have. You kind of have to just dust yourself off and say, now what? How do I carve out my new path forward? Right.
Yeah.
And even kind of like you said, like, should I be conquering the world? What should I be doing now? I've had so many incredible opportunities presented to me. People want to do movies of my story. People want to do this and that and whatever. But to be honest, I'm just so happy giving back in the small ways that I do, and then I can give so much of my time to my kids. The reason that I fought so hard to survive for, they were just babies when I was first diagnosed, and they too went through this journey. Like I always say, we were diagnosed with cancer, because it was our whole family. And I feel like we all get to celebrate these bonus days. And, I'm so comfortable being comfortable, really, and not pushing for the stars. I already feel like I've accomplished so much by my survival journey. And I'm really happy giving back in the ways that I'm able. And I feel like I don't need or crave all that go nature that I used to be. I'm so happy just sinking into the power of now. And those are the lessons, right, that we come out with that better our lives after cancer. So as much as cancer comes to steal, it also gives us so much. So can you share with us a few things that cancer brought you, a few of the silver linings?
I am not as hard on my body. So they pumped me with cortisone. So I blew up like a balloon, called myself Butterbean. And afterwards I'd lost all that weight, and I put it back on. And I always think, oh, you need to lose weight. But then I think, this poor body has been through so much.
Yes.
Let it be a bit plumpy, and there's more of me to love. So eventually I'll lose it again, and I know I can. But right now, it is what it is.
Yes. And how
this body has kept me alive. It's fought like hell for 2 years. So let it be. It's not unhealthy. It's got a little bit of fat in places that it shouldn't have, but that's fine.
So it sounds like you've adopted more self-love.
Yeah.
Ah, beautiful. And what a gift, right, that cancer can bring. What else? Any other silver linings?
That's probably it. And just, dealing with the day as it comes.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm so much more entrenched in the power of now. I have this like incredible calm in my heart that I never otherwise had. I can just sink in. I think before I missed so many of the moments, always being ready for the next one, and now I'm just so present. I'm so present.
It's almost like I've got a hell of, I'm normally OCD and with finances and savings, and I'm thinking, well, we don't know what tomorrow is going to do. So if you want to buy those pair of shoes or what, do it.
Yeah.
We'll deal with the consequences afterwards.
And what are some of the tools that really helped you, rise day to day, keep getting up every day despite the hardships, hold on to hope, overcome, and even thrive now? What are some of the tools that have really helped you?
Talking about it. That is the biggest thing. I bottled it up a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
And it's more when I started talking about it, it definitely does. And that's also a very big thing is I reach out to a lot of people that are going through the same thing, because I didn't have somebody at my age. So I try and reach out a lot to people that are going through it, because no one knows, no one can tell you, like there's no roadmap, there's no handbook, but having someone there that has been through it, that can say, oh, I've got a rash, or I've got a pain here, and don't worry, that's normal. It happens. You're going through chemo. You're going to feel. I mean, the chemo didn't hurt me as much as the radiation. The radiation knocked me. I was horribly sick throughout every night. But I wasn't as nauseous and vomiting with the chemo. So it's things like that helped. That I got in touch with a few people that have unfortunately, they're not with us anymore.
This is a really important part that I want to highlight too, because you said there weren't a lot of people your age to talk to. And I found the same thing, facing leukemia, acute leukemia as a young woman, right? There weren't a lot of people who had similar life circumstances to myself. And so it leaves us feeling really lonely, right? There were a lot of people having, that had their own caregivers, right?
Yeah.
They were a few years older, perhaps, just different life circumstances. And yet I'm a caregiver to 2 babies, and yet I'm confined to the hospital. I needed to talk to somebody who understood it from my perspective.
Yeah.
And it was really hard as a young woman who doesn't have breast cancer. You don't have that social circle. It's kind of like you're out of that club that unites a lot of the young women who do have cancer. And so you really do have to be very proactive in your own pursuits, whether that's on social media, whether that's finding groups in your own community by asking, your own healthcare providers to connect you with other people. But you do have to be very proactive in seeking others who are navigating similar circumstances, but in also seeking others who can be inspirational role models to you, who have perhaps had similar circumstances years prior. Both of those have really saved me along the way.
Yeah.
There was this one young woman that I had eventually connected with on my floor who also had, she had actually had lymphoma, similar story to you. And it was stage 4 as well, in her bone marrow as well. She had also had a stem cell transplant. She was also a young mom. My youngest was the same age as her son. And we could never be in the same room together because we were always so darn immunocompromised with, no white blood cells whatsoever. But we would text. And sometimes we were in the room side by side, so our heads were adjacent to the wall, and we'd give each other a little tap through the wall. And that was enough. I just knew she was there and she got it. Or we would be texting all day. She could have been anywhere in the world, but that support was really a lifeline for me, as was, when I was told I hadn't responded to the first round of chemotherapy that I was told I would have an 80% chance of success with. And then I was told I would need this round of salvage chemotherapy, followed by a bone marrow stem cell transplant. And I was like, no, that sounds brutal. Show me somebody who's thriving with that on the other side of this treatment that you proposed for me, show me that rising star. And very few people have had salvage chemotherapy, but my amazing team at Vancouver General Hospital here in Canada, they dug through all of their records and they found this one woman, Mary. And Mary was kind enough to come and visit me in my hospital room one day. And I think I was even in septic shock this day, to be honest. It was a really hard day. It was a hot day outside, but I was stuck in there with this sepsis and I was on, really sick at the time, And she just stood in my doorway when she walked in as this peaceful presence. And gosh, I swear she just lit up. She looked like an angel in my door, She grabbed a chair. She came and sat next to me. She put her hand on my leg, just that connection, like she just got it on a deeper level of exactly what I needed in that time. And she just said everything that I needed to hear, of how hard it was for her and how she had held on. And, she had been 45 at the time. I was only 35. And now she was 60. And she was about to leave my hospital and she was going up to BC Children's and Women's Hospital just up the road to meet her firstborn grandson. And for me, instantaneously, when she told me that, I was like, okay, I can do this. And instantly I then pictured myself as this, because she was like this fit little granny, and I'm like, I'm going to be this fit little granny one day, pushing my babies down the seawall here in West Van. And I just had this vision of myself as this grandma one day, and I could feel it. I could, feel the wind in my hair. I could taste the salt water. I was next to the beach. I could hear my kids laughing and I could literally see little babies in this little stroller, having the time of their lives on this seawall walk, and me just scooting my little hips down the path. I could feel every part of it, and she was such a light. She was such an inspiration for me. So, the power of that connection it's irreplaceable. I had 60 people coming to see me every day of friends and family, but unless you're really connecting with those people who you really do understand the hardships of the journey, you can still feel so alone. And that's why we're here doing the show with amazing people like Melissa. So what else, Melissa? These connections, reaching out to people, what else helped you stay the course?
Yeah, that's it. It's the connections. It's really the connection. And I kind of, I hear of somebody that is going through that, and I don't want to throw myself at them, but I send them a message and I say, I'm here if you need me. And I understand how it is, because when I was diagnosed, everybody bombarded me. Do this, do that. Don't do chemo, do this. So I understand that just give out an olive branch and say, do you need something? And then yes or no, they'll chat to you and they'll open up to you. But that's my biggest thing is going through the losing your hair. That was probably one of the hardest things that I had to go through. My hair was long. My hair was down to my waist. We cut it off and then it started coming out in clumps. But I could not get out the house bald. I couldn't do it until eventually I had a hot flush and I had to do it. So it's things like that is just helping people say, you're going to feel like that. It's going to happen. It's okay. Yeah. You're normal.
I have to say, I think I was a bit of an odd duck for this one. I really loved being bald. I don't know what it was about it. I just loved showing off my little bald head. I don't know what it was about it, but I did love it. The only thing that I found difficult, because people that know me well know that I am always, always cold. And I think I spend a lot of energy, just preserving my health, to be honest. But I don't thrive on the warmth factor. And one thing I did find, fortunately, I started being bald in the summer, but gosh, as it got into the colder months, I just felt such a draft all the time. So that was the hard part for me. Yeah.
You don't realize how much heat is on your head. So that was another thing. Beanies, and then in the summer, now going through the summer, I want to shave it off again. So
yeah. Okay, Dwight, I see the reminder for the time. Thank you. Anyhow, Melissa, you have been such an inspiration today. I am so happy we finally connected. I've been really just watching you from afar on your feed. And I just really admire what you do and sharing your story so openly on your blog. And I really hold a lot of respect for you and how you give back and how you're thriving now. I know my audience will really appreciate this. So thank you for being here with us today, Melissa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And up next, Risers and Thrivers, stay tuned. In 2 weeks, we will feature Matt, who will talk all about his journey with ulcerative colitis, ulcerative colitis, and his path with autoimmune disease. That'll be a great show too. He's a young warrior. So please join us on the live in 2 weeks from now. All the best, Risers and Thrivers. Rise today. Bye-bye.